On August 17, 1966, two electronics technicians left their homes in Niterói, Brazil, and set out on what appeared to be an ordinary trip. Their names were Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana. Both men worked repairing electronic equipment and had a shared interest in spiritualism and unusual scientific experiments. Before leaving, they told their families they were traveling to purchase materials for work. Nothing about their departure seemed unusual. They carried money with them, dressed neatly, and appeared to be in good spirits. During their journey, witnesses later reported seeing the men buy a bottle of water from a local shop. One detail stood out to the shopkeeper. Despite the warm weather, both men were wearing heavy raincoats. The reason for this was never explained. From there, the men traveled toward Vintém Hill, an elevated area overlooking the city. The hill was already known locally because of occasional reports of strange lights seen in the sky, although these reports had never been officially verified. After arriving in the area, Manuel and Miguel seemingly vanished. When they failed to return home, their families became concerned. Several days later, on August 20, a local boy flying a kite near Vintém Hill made a disturbing discovery. Lying on the hillside were the bodies of both men. They were found side by side, fully dressed with no obvious signs of violence. Their money and personal belongings were still with them, suggesting robbery was not a motive. Investigators examining the scene quickly noticed something highly unusual. Covering the eyes of each man was a homemade mask made from sheets of lead. The masks had no lenses and appeared to have been cut and shaped by hand. Nearby, police discovered a notebook containing a short set of handwritten instructions. The note included the phrases 16:30 be at the designated place, 18:30 ingest capsules, after effect protect metals, and finally, await signal. Mask, the note immediately became the most important piece of evidence in the case. It appeared that the men had planned their trip in advance and were following a specific sequence of instructions. However, investigators had no idea what the instructions meant. What were the capsules? What signal were they waiting for? And why would they need lead masks? These questions would soon make the lead masks case one of Brazil's most famous unsolved mysteries. At first glance, the death seemed straightforward, but the more investigators examined the evidence, the stranger the case became. As investigators began examining the scene and interviewing people connected to the two men, the case became increasingly difficult to explain. One of the first challenges was determining how Manuel and Miguel had died. Unfortunately, by the time their bodies were discovered, several days had passed. The hot weather had accelerated decomposition, making a complete forensic examination difficult. Doctors were unable to establish a definitive cause of death. More importantly, they could not determine whether poison had played a role. This was a major problem because the note found at the scene specifically instructed the men to ingest capsules at 6:30 p.m. Despite an extensive search, no capsules, containers, or packaging were ever recovered. Investigators were left wondering whether the men had taken some kind of substance shortly before their deaths. If so, what was it and where had it come from? The answer was never found. Detectives then turned their attention to the men's personal lives. Interviews revealed that Manuel and Miguel shared an interest in spiritualism and paranormal subjects. During the 1960s, spiritualist movements were popular in parts of Brazil, and some groups combined religious beliefs with ideas about science, energy, and communication with higher beings. Friends and acquaintances told investigators that the two men had participated in experiments involving electronic equipment and attempts to receive messages from non-physical sources. Some reports suggested they believed certain frequencies or signals could be used to contact advanced intelligences. As police dug deeper, they learned that this was not the first unusual experiment connected to the men. Witnesses described previous attempts involving homemade devices, written instructions, and spiritual practices. While many of these accounts were difficult to verify, they suggested that the trip to Vintém Hill may have been part of a planned experiment rather than a random outing. This possibility made the note even more significant. The instructions appeared organized and deliberate, almost like a checklist. The men had apparently arrived at a specific location at a specific time, consumed capsules, and then put on the lead masks while waiting for some kind of signal. But what exactly they expected to happen remains unknown. Another unusual detail emerged during the investigation. On the evening the men traveled to Vintém Hill, several people reported seeing strange lights in the area. One witness claimed to have observed a bright orange object hovering over the hill. Similar reports had occasionally surfaced before, contributing to the hill's reputation as a location associated with unexplained aerial phenomena. However, investigators could not verify whether these sightings were connected to the deaths. They may have been unrelated observations, misidentifications, or simply stories that gained attention after the case became public. The lead masks themselves offered few answers. Experts confirmed that they were handmade from sheets of lead and appeared designed to cover only the eyes. This led to a number of theories. Some suggested the masks were intended to protect against a bright flash of light. Others believe they may have been connected to some type of electronic or scientific experiment. However, no equipment was found near the bodies and no explanation fully accounted for why the masks were necessary. As weeks passed, investigators found themselves with more questions than answers. They had 2 dead men, a cryptic note, missing capsules, unusual masks, and reports of strange lights, yet none of the evidence clearly pointed toward a single explanation. The lead masks case was quickly attracting national attention, and newspapers across Brazil began publishing theories of their own. Some were grounded in the known facts of the investigation. Others ventured into much more speculative territory. This theory helps explain the unusual instructions in the note, but there is little evidence beyond witness testimony and the men's known interests. The most famous theory, and the one that attracted the most media attention, involves UFOs. Reports of strange lights near Vintém Hill existed before the deaths, and several witnesses claimed to have seen unusual objects in the sky around the time Manuel and Miguel were on the hill. Supporters of this theory suggest the men believed they would encounter an unidentified aerial phenomenon and prepared accordingly. Some have speculated that the lead masks were designed to shield their eyes from an intense flash of light. While this explanation is intriguing, investigators found no physical evidence linking the deaths to any aerial phenomenon. The UFO connection remains based largely on witness reports and speculation. There are also theories involving secret groups, experimental technology, or information that was never disclosed to authorities. However, these ideas rely even more heavily on assumptions and have little supporting evidence. What makes the lead masks case so enduring is that none of the proposed explanations fully account for all of the known facts. Investigators never discovered who wrote the note, what the capsules contained, why the men chose Vintém Hill, what signal they were expecting, or why they believed lead masks were necessary. Nearly 60 years later, these questions remain unanswered. The case eventually grew cold, and no major breakthroughs have been made since, yet it continues to attract attention from researchers, journalists, and mystery enthusiasts around the world. Unlike many unsolved cases, the mystery does not revolve around identifying a suspect or locating a missing person. Instead, the central puzzle is understanding the intentions of the 2 men themselves. The evidence suggests they traveled to the hill voluntarily, followed a carefully planned set of instructions, and expected something to happen. Whether that something was scientific, spiritual, or entirely misunderstood remains unknown. Today, the lead masks case stands as one of Brazil's most puzzling unsolved mysteries. 2 men climbed a hill carrying a plan that only they fully understood. They left behind a cryptic note, a pair of homemade lead masks, and a series of questions that investigators have never been able to answer. And until new evidence emerges, the events that unfolded on Vintém Hill in August 1966 will likely remain a mystery. The lead masks case remains one of the most unusual unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. Decades have passed, investigations have come and gone, and countless theories have been proposed, yet the events that took place on Vintém Hill remain unexplained. What were Manuel and Miguel truly expecting to find that evening? What was the signal they were waiting for? And why did they believe they needed those strange lead masks? We may never know the answers. If you enjoyed this exploration of a real-life mystery, be sure to subscribe and join us for more unexplained cases, historical mysteries, and strange events from around the world. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious.